And we're live.
Yes, live from Rose State. That was another life. Okay, um, one of the ways I made money, yeah, no, all right, I started. One of the ways I made money when I was going through high school or college is I drove truck for Standard Oil, but I was also on radio in Kent, Ohio, doing the news, and it was fun, but I realized very quickly that only a few people made it, and when you worked in a local market like Kent, you got minimum wage for reporting the news, and everybody thought it was so exciting, but didn't earn more being a trucker. So absolutely. All right, let's get to modules. Enough of that old history. What we are going to look at today is a second take on modules, and we've got some things that we need to analyze and look at for the program that we're taking. Now, last Thursday, if you'll remember, what we did was we created our first module, and we decided, or I decided for you, that it was going to be a menu. And remember, we learned how to put comments in that can be brought up by using the help function within Python. So that was one thing, and then we wrote our little menu process, and we added in if item equals 0, then we're just going to exit right away. Else, we're going to return whatever the item number was that was selected. And remember, we're making our selection as a string, and we're using numbers because they are a lot harder to screw up than letters. So we go with numbers in our selection process. Then we created just a short test strip that we're going to modify again today to do the testing, and most importantly, and this is lines 11 and 12, and how we can ensure that the library that we're using is in the correct path or in our system's path, so it will work properly when we run our script. So, today, climbing onward and upward, where are we going to put the next module? And so we've got a couple of different things that we can look at. One, it can be a standalone module. And this isn't for bonus points, but what do we mean standalone? That should be easy. Runs by itself. It's standalone. It's not included with other modules in a file. So that gives away the next one. We can include it with other modules in our file. Now, for bonus points, what are the advantages and disadvantages that you see in that? Let's see. How about Josh Robinson? Not here. All right. Let me pick on somebody that's here. Robert, what do you think? Yes, sir. Okay, wait a minute. Just a little louder.
Maybe saving memory by consolidating.
Okay, saving memory by consolidating, putting everything in one file. Might help us out a little bit. All right. Christina, what do you think?
A disadvantage or advantage?
Either one.
Well, I mean, he took one of the advantages. The other one, it would all be in one location for common functions or modules you're using. I think a disadvantage is if it wasn't in the same location as what you're trying to run the program. You wouldn't be able
Okay.
to pull it in as easily.
All right, very good point. Dallas, what do you think?
Another disadvantage is by having it in one location, if that location becomes compromised, you lose it all. I mean, it can all be.
Very good. Very good. Okay. Colton, what do you think?
If you're air checking, if a disadvantage of it being not in the same location is if you tried to air check it and it was in a different location, then it's just not in the same file. So you'd have to air check both of them to see how it's like airing out.
Okay, so if we look at this, standalone versus include in the file system, where would you think we would want to store it?
Cloud or?
Well, in the cloud, okay, Helmy?
We can do the three of
We
them.
were afraid the Illuminati got you, buddy.
Well, we can do the three of them. Like, we can put it on a flash drive. We can put it on the same computer. We can put it on the cloud. Like, we
Okay.
have three options.
Right, we have three options, but think back last week, what did we decide we were gonna do with this one?
Put it on the same computer.
Right, put it in the project folder,
Yeah.
same file,
Yeah.
all right? So, but we can make some changes with that. So these are things that you're gonna have to consider as you go through building any type of library that you wanna create, any of the modules that you're looking at. And we'll walk through this and do a little bit more. Now, the module we're gonna create is time, rate, and distance. So how many variables are we gonna have to consider? Three. Okay, good. All right, we're on a roll. What are the formulae that we're going to need?
Distance equals
Garrett.
rate over time?
Distance equals rate over time. That's one. Next one.
Rate times equals distance? I don't know.
Distance equals rate of time, so rate time equals time times.
We got that one. Okay. So next one. Keep going.
Rate would equal time times distance, is that right? Or, it'd be actually time would equal distance over rate, if it's gonna be distance.
Time would equal distance over rate. Yep, that's correct. Okay.
And rate equal time on distance.
All right. So these are the three formulas we have to consider. D equals R times T. First one, that's the standard one. Rate equals the distance divided by the time, and the time equals the distance divided by the rate. Simple algebra. All right. So now we've got a problem that we have to overcome, and what's that problem?
Writing the formula for this,
Well, no, we just did that.
coding it out.
Coding it out. The problem we have to overcome is why the slides aren't advancing. There we go. Okay, so module considerations. Are we going to prompt in the module for the rate, the distance, the time, or are we going to prompt and send those values to the module? So if we send to the main script, can we send three different variables?
Sure.
Correct. Sure we can. Okay.
Yeah, I was about
Tell
to
me.
say yes.
Oh, you were about to say, all right. Okay. We have two people who agree that we can send a variety of variables from our module. That's correct. We can send one.
Whether you choose to use them, it's up to
Yeah, whether you're going to use them or not, but we'll look at that. All right. If we're going to solve for distance, rate, or time, we're going to have a value that has no numeric value. How are you going to fix that? What are you going to do with that?
That has to, say that again. That has to go.
Okay, I've got my form. Last night I did this and ended up throwing the marker at the back of the room. It was so dry. Fortunately, there was nobody back there. Let's say we're going to solve for distance. So right now, distance equals 0. Our rate equals 50. And our time equals 0.25. quarter of an hour.
You multiply it to get your.
Okay, but how are we going to handle selecting the formula we're going to use? And how do we get all that squared away?
Well, are these not gonna be three different ones, and we're gonna ask for that particular one?
Right, but how are we going to know which one to ask for?
Put it in a function like that?
Well, yeah, that's what we're doing, a module.
Oh, okay.
Like we're asking them which function, which formula you want to do.
What formula do you want to do, and how can we make it foolproof?
If statement maybe.
If statements, good. How are we going to do the if statements?
If rate is and time are greater than zero, use, I guess, different.
Okay. Go ahead, Helmy.
Maybe, let's say, if we can do the if statements, if, like, let's say if r equals 0, then do this formula, and if t equals 0, then do this formula.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
You get bonus points for
I
that.
was
Very
gonna say,
good.
That's where I was gonna go, but he got there.
Yeah.
I like it.
All right. So, what we're going to evaluate is if the value of r, d, or t is 0, then we're going to perform a specific function. What's the other factor you got to consider?
What if one of those values are zero also?
Couldn't be,
I mean,
unless we've crashed. So, okay.
well, in this particular.
Our assumption will be that there will always be a rate and a time.
Okay.
If not, we're not going anywhere. Garrett?
We need to make sure that we tell the user to input it properly, and then the correct miles or kilometers, and make sure they're inputting it properly.
Okay.
And it needs to come out as a float.
Ah.
Yeah. Can't be.
Let's see, did I give you? You already got credit. But anyway, Colton's got a good point. It has to come out as a float. Why?
Yeah.
Sean?
Because it needs to be able to accept decimals.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. What's need to accept decimals is the key, because what's going to happen, d equals rt, we don't have any problem with. Now, where did I put it? But if we go, that could equal a float, all right? We could have a decimal there. And we have to be able to account for that. We might not have a decimal. Who knows? So we're better off if we account for it. So, any other factors we want to consider? And we have basically two options. We can either request the inputs in the module, or we can send the inputs to the module when we make that selection. So let's take a look at it both ways and see what's going to happen with the coding. So since I need to make this an abbreviated class, this will be out on D2L this afternoon. Go ahead and work with it, enter it, and see if you can find any errors. All right, so we're creating a new module. And I got real creative and called the module DRT. Yeah, okay, couldn't think of anything else. Now, I put in my help information, again, 3 double quote marks at the top, 3 double quote marks at the bottom. And I explained that the module computes distance, rate, or time depending on the variables provided. Then, so the end user, if they're smart enough to bring this up, knows how we're calculating each one of them, I put the 3 formulas in. All right, and I made them stand out. So we've got this part of it set, and then a note down at the bottom. All variables are set to 0. The script solves for the variable that has the 0 value. Is that enough for the end user to know Yeah, I think so. What about the float? Should we say anything about float in here?
No.
I think it should be in your module.
It's in the, okay, explain.
I mean, when you call it, it should come out, you should have float, then the
Okay,
asking for the module or the function,
all right,
so it converts it.
all right. So what do we say? Does the let me rephrase the question. Olivia, does the end user need to know that we're messing around with float? No. Right answer. Half credit, you only shook your head. No. The end user doesn't need to know about float, okay? That's going to confuse them. So what we're going to do is we're going to handle the float internally, but this will work. Again, don't try and type all this in. Tell me.
Like, how about we, instead of just, like, in getting everything confused, just write at the eval command and input the eval?
Okay,
Like,
we're not ready to run yet. Let's do it the way that we all understand. We're not Python gamers like you are. Okay, so how can we account for this? Well, the easiest way to do it, and this is in the process where we're going to have the user input the data in the model. We're going to create 3 variables, distance, rate, and time. If I say they equal 0.0, what does Python do? Makes it what? A float. All right, so now we've got float covered. Even if I enter just a 0 or just a whole integer, we can still cover float. All right, because once a numeric value is declared, it can't be changed. All right, so line 26, very simple. Backslash, enter 0, and our end users aren't real smart, so I put 0 so they wouldn't enter an O, okay? For the value to solve. Distance equals float. All right, overkill, but I just want to make sure it's going to always be float. All right, input the distance or 0. I'm reminding them every time. Input the rate or 0 or input the time or 0. Was there a hand? Yes, sir.
Well, I did have a question then. So when you put distance is equal to 0.0, that actually already floats distance then? Or?
Right, you can just put 0 in there. This is already equal to, I've got overkill in here.
Yeah, so you don't have to put float again, but
You wouldn't have to, but
okay.
I don't trust Python 100%. 99.9.
But
All right.
basically, I think what he's asking is by automatically setting it up as a float, tells it to be a float.
Yep, tells it to be a float.
I guess that Python could confuse it if the user just hits 0 instead of 0.0. It might convert it to
Right.
integer.
Actually, doing this is the end user can hit 0, and it's gonna convert it.
Flip.
Yep. All right, so we've got these values in. Now, all we need to do is compute using our formulas. So I'm just going to use a series of if and else if statements. If the distance equals 0, print the distance. Notice I'm going to use the format command. I'm not going to create a bunch of code to do the calculations, because using the format command, I can do my calculations right in my print statement. Saves me time, easy to troubleshoot. Unless you're getting paid by the line of code, then you want to make it as long as you can. All right, so figure it out and then put it in. Notice I set up a response here. Input, press enter to continue. You want to give them time to read what the answer is. Next one is rate. Very simply, this is the automatic return when I get too far across the screen. But here we've got the rate. Again, we're going to do our format. and distance divided by time. And then if it's not rate, if it's not distance, then we know it's time. So else print time, and we're going to enter our time. All right. Now, note the parentheses here in the print statement, time reported in tense. All right. So we all understand that, but the end user might not. Well, if they don't, they probably shouldn't be flying an airplane. But all right, and the response is all the same. Now, we could have created maybe a little function in this to handle the response, but that's going to be more code than just copying it and dropping it into each of the else statements. Okay? And we've got a return. Pretty simple. Any questions on that part? Okay, we got a little time. If you're typing, go ahead and finish. That way. But all the lectures are linked out to my YouTube site for you to take a look at. All right, so we've got this done. Remember last week that we created a test script. And that test script we're going to go in and modify however we need to modify it to run our tests. So here's what the modifications are to test this setup on the code. Line 15, we named the file DRT. All right, so from DRT, we're going to import, and we named the module DRT. Makes it simple, less for an old guy like me to remember. So from DRT, we're going to import DRT. This means what? That it's a standalone file. All right. We could have had aircraft library or something like that, but we're making them standalone files so they can be reused. Response equals menu. I put a line in here, value selected. This one we didn't have before because all we tested was exiting out of the script. And so now we'll come down, and if response equals 2, then we're going to go to our DRT module, and then we're going to print end of test, so we know when we've completed everything. I put line 25 in because now we need to know that we've come back to that test script and it's run and it's completed. So we start to program, and the first thing we see are our 5 options for the program. We've already tested 0, and we decided we're going to take a look at option 2. So we type in 2, that's the green 2 on the screen. Now we've come back to the test script, and it read or was reported back that the menu item selection was 2. So now we verified that the main script and the module are communicating with each other. We don't need to worry about that anymore. Do you have to test that? No, you probably don't, but I like to know right up front if it's not talking back to my test script where I might be able to find the problem before I get too far down the road. All right, so there's our selected value of 2 at the top of the screen. And now we get our prompt, enter 0 for the value to be solved. So for this example, for distance, I entered 0. I entered a rate of 60, and I entered a time of 0.5. Remember, we're doing tenths of hours. All right, and so the computation was my distance traveled was 30. Think about it, is that correct? Let's see. I'm going 60 miles an hour. I go for a half hour. Yep, should be 30 miles. So when you test these, you want to test them with known values or values that you can easily figure out in your head to know that they're working. Press enter to continue, and I came back to end of test. Some puzzled looks. What questions do you have? Okay, good. Then I have some. But what if we wanted to do just the processing in the module? All right, so we want all the input to come maybe from a different type of user interface, all right, and do all the processing in the module. And then what considerations will we need to make if we're going to do that? And then finally, what we need to consider is, can we use part of the script that we just created to test our hypothesis? Well, let's do the easy one first. Yes, we can. All right, we can reuse that code. We're going to have to modify it slightly, but we can reuse the code. What considerations do we need to make? Jaron? What do you think?
I'm drawing a blank.
Okay, that's all right.
Professor,
No,
I really don't get the question. I'm kind of weird. I really don't get it.
okay,
No, the first one. Yeah, I wanted to do just processing the module. What it like?
all right. We don't want any prompt in our module. We want to send the values out to the module, and we want it to report back an answer.
He's
Okay?
talking about like if you put the inputs in the system test, right?
Exactly.
And then it processes, just the module processes all the information. That's it. You don't put anything in the module.
We don't want any of this.
Well, no.
Now,
That's
up
the
farther.
four lines.
One
There
more.
it is.
Yeah, we don't want any of this in the module for some reason. Okay?
We don't want to have a user enter any of the values.
No, the user has to enter them,
Just
But-
not in there.
but not in there.
Not in the module. Yeah.
All right, we want to have that right now from the test script. All right, so what do we need to consider?
How would we get it to be able to send over to the module?
Right, how do we get it sent over to the module? Good, Jared. What are the considerations we need there? Anybody?
Mine's just a suggestion, I don't know.
Go ahead.
I would say something that already goes back into like self-check, where you have, now you have all your 3 answers.
Wait,
Something that you can put
Wait,
back
guys.
in, and of course, it should break it down to your formula, what you put in. I mean, I don't know.
Okay.
something of-
All right.
I mean,
so say it.
Everything you can check, because I'm, being in algebra, it's like anything you can convert back to, so they should be able, I don't know how, but of course, to convert it back to your basic numbers of what you entered or the input.
Okay, so the first step is, how are we going to check to make sure everything is correct? All right. Follow that with, can we check if everything's correct? We'll have to look at that. What were you guys talking about, Garrett? It sounded,
He was still confused about the question.
I didn't even know.
Ah!
I didn't hear the question, so I was asking what the question was.
Okay.
It makes sense now. You're just trying to check what you have for the formula.
right.
So then you just write another one.
How do we get it there?
You just do the opposite of what you do up there, right? To get that same
For running,
thing you
yeah.
inputted.
Let's do this. The way we get it there, don't want to write on the screen, is DRT2 is my module name now, and I'm going to send distance, rate, and time. The inputs made on our test script, all right? I can name these variables in a module anything I want to name them. I think they call them attributes somewhere out in Python. But why not name them what they actually are and then we can use them within the program. What's the key when we send this information from our test script? It has to be in the distance, rate, time format. If we send rate first, our module's going to say, oh, that's the distance. The first number we send always has to be distance, the second rate, and the last time. Last fall when I did this class, one of the people in the class couldn't understand that you had to send the numbers in the sequence they were going to be used, or the sequence they needed to be identified. Okay, so minor change, we rename it. You can use a copy duplicate or however you want to do it and rename it. Distance, rate, and time are going to be the values that we're going to send up to the module. We've got our write-up from before. So it becomes very easy. We have no, input to make. If the distance equals 0, that we pick up from here, then we're going to solve for distance. The code, this part of the code where we actually do the work, is exactly the same. Okay, I thought I had an example run of this. So what we're actually, doggone it, the slide I forgot to put in is the slide that shows your test file. Go ahead.
So on the else one, how do you enter a time? Which is just automatically prints the time, I guess?
No, the time, hang on. All right, hang on. So, no, don't say that. All right, so this is the actual code for D equals RT. And what we want to look at in particular is the test script. So here's the test script. From menu, we want to import. We've seen all that. Here's our if response. If the response is equal to 2, reported back from our menu module. If response equals 2, then we're going to print out the information that we need. Distance, again, we've got float set up, and then to the DRT2 module, we're going to pass distance, rate, and time. So that's the way that's set up. All right. I don't have to call it distance, rate, and time here. If I said this was A, B, and C, and I passed it as A, B, and C, what my DRT2 module would recognize those as distance, rate, and time. We're not passing variable names between the test program and the module. All we're passing are values.
And that's
Okay.
based on the index location? So if it was A, B, and C, when you come to DRT2, distance is in 0 spot, A is in 0 spot, B would be in 0 spot, so rate would be in 0 spot, is that what?
I'm not sure I understand the
Your
question,
distance, when you're passing it, is it because it's the first one?
yes.
Okay.
The way the module is written, distance always has to be passed first. Rate second, and time third. So it doesn't make any difference in the test script what I call these values, what variable names I give these inputs. As long as the first variable name is always distance and it's sent first. Okay. Colton?
I was just gonna ask, why'd you import both of them if you're just gonna use the same thing?
Why did I
You
import?
imported the first one and the second one of DRT?
I'm not sure which one I'm going to use yet.
Okay.
Okay. Question someplace else.
I was just wondering then, for the sake of speed of the program, could you put under, instead of importing DRT2, could you do it under the if response, so you're not importing all of them? So like when you hit 2 in the menu, that's when it imports DRT2.
Now, what's the rule?
Has to be before the function.
It has to be before the function needs to be called. All right, so Python culture says we put all of our from import statements at the beginning before we start to do any of the code. So when we look at this, line 9, import system, we have to have that imported before we can evaluate this if statement. All right, and we have to have our library in the system path before we can call the next set of modules. All right, so I couldn't put these modules up here under import system because I haven't checked to see if the path is valid yet or not. Okay, good question. Helmut?
Why, I don't get the line 19, response equal menu.
Okay, response equals menu. What's menu? That is the module that contains our menu function. Okay? And if the selection is anything other than 0, it's going to be sent back to the calling piece of code.
Oh.
And so what this is getting, this is just a shorthand way to say my response is going to equal whatever's returned from menu. We know that's going to be a string value, hence if response equals the string character 2. Okay.
What about if we put it in the menu itself and say if we, well no, it's over here. I was about to say the same thing, if response equal 2 then do these, but I was thinking to put it in the menu already. But.
Okay. All right. Good questions. Anything else? Let me show you that this actually works, I hope. This isn't configured to run off the Z drive.
You just copy and paste it to another file and just run it from there, or I guess just from all of them.
Hang on a second, I'll tell you if I have time to do that or
It's
not.
11:47 right now.
No, we don't have time to do that. Yes, we could.
I'm trying to, I don't know if it's just my computer, but I'm trying to run it, and whenever I type in 2, it just says end of test. For me, at least.
Okay. I'll look at it real quick on my way out. For those of you who came in late, please set your ID cards out on the table, and I'll get those as I go out. And this is, all right, come on.
I'm thinking to do the whole thing by myself at home.
This is what you need to know about the next class. Little quiz on chapter 8 and 9 in the book. It'll be topped off with troubleshooting some code. I would probably guess it'd be something about modules, but I guess anyway. And we'll do it in class, all right? So,
Is it a hard quiz?
is it a hard quiz? Depends on how much you study.